Okay, venerable members of the Sangha, dear friends in Dhamma who are joining us from different cities, different countries on YouTube and Facebook. We would like to welcome all of you to our bi-weekly sutra discussion. And I would like to wish all of you a happy Vesak. Happy Vesak is like Merry Christmas in the Western world. And so we, monks and nuns, would like to bring blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha to all of you and to the people around the world. May all sentient beings be happy. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. May all sentient beings be happy. So with this greetings in mind, let us begin our bi-weekly sutra discussion by paying respect and homage to the Buddha by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So dear friends in Dhamma, we normally have our bi-weekly sutra discussion on a Saturday. It was supposed to be last Saturday, but due to Vesak programs held at many Buddhist temples around the world, our venerable monks and nuns were busy with the programs. So it was the opinion of majority of the participating monks and nuns to do this bi-weekly sutra discussion on the Vesak Eve. So tomorrow is the Vesak full moon day, the real Vesak day. So it's in Asia, early morning, and I think in Australia, New Zealand, they have already started the Vesak program. But we, monks and nuns in the West, in North America and Europe, we would like to have this discussion on the Vesak Eve to bring the positive feelings to everyone. Since this is the Vesak celebration month, so today we, monks and nuns, thought of having a special discussion about the Vesak. So today we are going to talk about the Vesak and its significance, birth, enlightenment, and passing away of the Buddha. So our venerable monks and nuns actually signed up for this discussion. They are going to talk about a lot of sutras, and they are going to tell you stories. And I would like to introduce all of you, our venerable monks and nuns who are here with us. And this gives us a great joy to see Bhante Bodhi. He was the actually special guest for past 2 times, but this time Bhante Bodhi said, this time I'm not going to be the special guest, but a participant. But it is such a great honor to have you, Venerable Sir, among us. This gives us a huge motivation inspiration, courage to the monks and nuns like us, just to have your presence. And I consider personally it's a great blessing for us. And I know you also gave a special the keynote speech on Vesak in New York, at the United Nations, right? One time, when they had the United Nations Vesak celebration, you gave a wonderful speech.
Yeah, I think I gave it 3 times or 4 times.
4 times, okay, yeah.
I think 3, 2012, 2014, 2017,
Yeah.
and 2000. I think 4 times altogether.
Yeah.
Once, yeah, it was a great speech.
Yeah. So, so today we have Bhante Vijita from Ottawa, Canada, Bhante Jinananda from Ottawa, Canada, and Venerable Ayya Sobhana Dhammadharini from California, and Venerable Muniputtu from Seattle, Bhante Kusala. Last time he was in Seattle, but this time he's in Toronto. He's based in Detroit, Michigan. And Ayya Sudinna from North Carolina, and Bhante Yuttadhammo from Niagara Falls. Bhante Sunita is here from Toronto, but he's based in Ottawa. And Bhante Punyaratana is joining us from Germany. Actually, it's midnight. And thank you so much for accepting our invitation to join us. And Venerable Bhikkhuni Ayya Sudinna from Charlotte Buddhist Vihara, and Venerable Tathaloka Bhikkhuni from California, and Bhante Sankija from Detroit, Michigan, USA, and Bhante Uparatana is joining us from Washington, D.C. So I would like to give you all a warm welcome to this sutra discussion with much respect and faith. So let us begin today's discussion with Bhante Sankija from Detroit. Since we all are here to celebrate the birth, enlightenment, and passing away of the Buddha, so Bhante Sankija, you got 5 to 6 minutes to talk about the birth of the Buddha. And I really love the background actually with the Vesak lanterns. It gives us the real Vesak feeling.
Yes, Bhante. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I wish all the Bhantes, Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis and our audience also a very happy and peaceful Vesak day. So I think as we celebrate the Vesak, the celebration of Lord Buddha's birth, great enlightenment and passing away, this is a very special time for us to get closer to the Buddha and his great teachings by doing so many things, by listening to the Dhamma, engaging in the Dhamma discussions, practicing meditation, and trying to cultivate all the meaningful Dhamma every possible way. So this is a time for us to refresh our memories and knowledge about the Buddha and his great enlightenment in order to make this Vesak day a very special one. So as we talk about the Buddha's birth on this very special day, it was somewhat closer to the age of enlightenment in Europe, as we learned, when the Buddha was born as Prince Siddhartha in India in the 6th BC. As intellectual awakening was taking place in the West, in the external and the material world, spiritual awakening was taking place in the East, in a mental or spiritual world. The spiritual revolutionary time, there were so many religions, spiritual teachers, belief systems in India, and they all were in search of ultimate truth, meaning of life, and what is the ultimate freedom of suffering, and enlightenment even. So in that spiritual thirst, there were so many common questions and problems, concerns they all had. So some of them were, where are we coming from? And where are we going after we die? And what is the purpose of life? And what is enlightenment? So there was some major concern in that spiritually revolutionary time in India. So this is the time that the Bodhisattva was in the Tusita heaven by the name of Sun Tusita, as we know. And having accepted the invitation by other gods to be born in the human world and attain enlightenment, after considering the proper time, country, the city, which is basically the suitable place, and the clan, and the mother, he conceived in the womb of Queen Mahamaya and was born in the Lumbini Park on the full moon day of Vesak. And we know the king Suddhodana was his father, the king of the Sakyas. The prince was named Siddhartha, the meaning, the wish fulfilled. At his birth, the wise people predicted this boy to be a monarch who will be ruling the entire world. Or this boy will be a great spiritual teacher to the world. So King Suddhodana, his father, wanted to keep him in the palace and make him a great emperor instead of making him a spiritual person. So he was very much concerned about him, and he was very careful to prevent all the painful, sorrowful scenes from his side, because he thought he would leave the palace and will be taking the spiritual route instead of being an emperor. So he gave all the luxuries in order to make him happy and keep him in the palace. So as we talk about the Buddha's birth, according to the discourse, one of the special things about the Buddha's birth is that the Bodhisattvas maintains a pure mindfulness, a real mindfulness throughout the entire process of conception and the birth. This is one of the unique marvels of the Buddhas. This is not a usual thing. This is not a simple thing for a normal person, and this is a unique thing only to a bodhisattva. Can you imagine to conceive in the mother's womb and to even stay mindful throughout the 10 months time until the birth? So this happened to the bodhisattva. So he was born in the Lumbini Park, and it is celebrated on this Vesak full moon day as a very rare thing to happen in this world. The birth of the Buddha is a very rare. You know, when we think about our own existence, as we travel through this existence, there are no many Buddhas. So we get Buddhas very rarely. So even today, when we think about it, we don't see a living Buddha, but his Dhammakaya or the teachings are available, and we are to see and realize the Buddha by practicing the Dhamma, by realizing the Dhamma. 7 days after the Prince Siddhartha's birth, Queen Mahamaya dies, and the prince was brought up with all the royal luxuries. So his father, King Suddhodana, gave him even 3 palaces for 3 different seasons. I think that is the highest luxury a person would ever have on this planet. I think he enjoyed all these luxuries. So the prince, at the same time, he was extraordinarily a kind and a smart kid. He grew up with all comfort, and he gained all the education as a prince, and he became a warrior too. And he got married to Princess Yasodhara, and they had a beautiful baby called Rahula. And they had a very successful royal life until he renounced the palace at the age of 29 in order to find the ultimate truth or the freedom of suffering. This is the basic knowledge or the information we know about Prince Siddhartha's birth. So there are so many things to learn. There are so many different ways to look at the Buddha and his birth. enlightenment in a historical perspective, in a spiritual perspective, maybe a sociological perspective. So all these perspectives are very important to realize who the Buddha was and how special, how important the Buddha and his birth, enlightenment are. So that is a little bit about the Buddha's birth.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante Sankich.
Yes,
The birth of the Buddha is the birth of enlightenment, isn't it?
exactly. Yes,
So, along with the birth of the Buddha, there were some wonderful and marvelous experiences and marvelous things that took place. And there is a special sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Acchariyaabbhutasutta, the sutta number 123. So I would like to invite Bhante Kusala to talk about the wondrous and marvelous experiences of the Buddha along with his birth. Bhante Kusala.
Okay. So this sutra is called Acchariyaabbhutasutta, which has Acharya, wonderful, and Abbhuta, marvelous qualities of a Tathagata. And these have been presented to the Sangha by Venerable Ānanda when the Buddha was present. So we have 19 qualities presented by Venerable Ānanda, and the last one was given by the Buddha himself. And because it is a list, I have to go through a list here, and forgive me, I'm not going to read the whole things. I had to summarize it.
Yeah.
So some of it Bhante Sankicha briefly mentioned. And Venerable Ānanda says, I heard and learned this, Venerable Sir, from the Blessed One's own lips. Mindful and fully aware, the Bodhisattva appeared, remained, and passed away from the Tusita heaven. And when the Bodhisattva passed away from Tusita heaven, he descended into his mother's womb. Then a great, immeasurable light, surpassing the splendor of the gods, appeared in the world. This 10,000-fold world system shook and quaked and trembled. Now, this is also mentioned in the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta and Mahāparinibbāna Sutta, so there are other sutta references. And when the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, 4 young deities came to guard him at the 4 quarters so that no humans or non-humans or anyone at all could harm the Bodhisattva or his mother. So these are wonderful and marvelous qualities. When the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, she became intrinsically virtuous, and she had all the luxuries in her life, and she also did not engage in any sensual thought. And any man who had any sensual thought would not be able to touch her. So, and she did not get sick, and she was able to see the Bodhisattva in her womb. So 7 days after the birth of the Bodhisattva, his mother died and reappeared in the Tusita heaven. This is also a wonderful quality. And when other women, when they give birth, their children remain in the womb for 9 or 10 months. But for the Bodhisattva, it is 10 months sharp. So she held the baby for 10 months. And she gave birth standing up. This is also a wonderful and marvelous quality. And when the Bodhisattva came forth from the mother's womb, first the gods received him, and then only humans received him. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, he did not touch the earth. The 4 young gods received him and set him before his mother, saying, the gods said, rejoice, O queen, a son of great power has been born to you. Then the Bodhisattva appeared pure. They did not have to clean him. And so when the Bodhisattva appeared, 2 water sprouts came from the sky, and one water sprout was cool and the other one was warm. So this was for the purpose of bathing the baby. And as soon as the Bodhisattva was born, he stood firmly with his feet on the ground, and he said, and he walked 7 steps on lotuses, holding a white parasol. And he said, I am the highest in the world, Aggo hamasmi lokassa, I am the best in the world, Jetto hamasmi lokassa, I am the foremost in the world, Setto hamasmi lokassa. This is my last birth, Ayam antima jati. Now there is no renewal of being for me, Nattidani punabhavo. And then a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared in the world. And finally, the Buddha adds that this should also be held as a wonderful and marvelous quality, that Tathagata, the feelings are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. This is a quality that a Tathagata has. And also perceptions and thoughts are known as they arise, as they are present, and as they disappear. So this last one does not involve the birth of the prince, and the other list, the whole 19 of them, I think they are about the birth and the wonderful and marvelous things involving involving an extraordinary human being being born to this world. And the last one is more about, I think, awakened aspects of him, as that feelings, perceptions, and thoughts to be known them as they arise, as they are present, and as they disappear. I think it requires a huge amount of mindfulness, and after the awakening, this goal was accomplished, and he remained that way throughout his life. So with deep bows, putting my palms together, I think I will let the other venerables carry on from hereafter.
Oh, thank you, Bhante Kusala. It was well done, and of course, those who want to learn more about all these marvelous and wonderful experiences of the birth of the Buddha, and I would highly recommend you to read this Acchariyaabbhutasutta, Madhyama Nikaya Sutta number 123. And maybe one day we might be able to have a discussion as well, or the open discussion. So let us continue. Now, we have spoken about the birth of the Buddha. And you know what? We are quickly going. I'm giving the 5 to 6 minutes to every venerable to talk about the birth, enlightenment, and passing away. But later on, we could have an open discussion. And of course, we among us, we have Bhante Bodhi, and we could learn so much from him if we have more time. And so now I would like to invite Bhante Jinananda from Ottawa, Canada, to talk about the way the Buddha attained to full enlightenment. Bhante Jinananda.
Thank you very much, Bhante Sanapal, for this opportunity, and Venerable Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis, and dear friends who joined with us. The birth of the Buddha and the way the Buddha attained to enlightenment is a huge topic, but I have only 5 to 6 minutes to talk about this. I might try to give the brief introduction to his enlightenment with some specialties that he experienced during his effort to enlightenment on the Vesak full moon day. Before that, I just want to tell you this, that the Buddha's enlightenment is a kind of mirrored by different ways. Buddha himself has talked about his enlightenment in Mahāsaccaka Sutta, in Ayya Sutta, and many other single discourses. And also Venerable Sariputta and great disciples have talked about the Buddha's enlightenment. Having considered all these statement by the Buddha himself, what we can say is that it is one of the marvelous happening in this universe. When I listen to Bhante Sankhya and Bhante Kusala, I came to know that this idea that attaining Buddhahood is the most important thing for us, because that is where we recognize the Buddha. As you know, friends, Prince Siddhartha's effort to find the truth is a real story of so much struggle. A lot of people say that the Bodhisattva had completed his paramitas in many lifetimes, and now why did the Buddha struggle for enlightenment? So I'm not going to go into that direction much, because my effort is to show you that how the Buddha attained full enlightenment. But if I touch this topic slightly, I can say that he struggled in a certain way because there was no teacher for him to get instruction. The Uddakaramputta, Alarkalam, those teachers whom he associated just before his self-mortification was a kind of encouragement for him to go into the practice, but he left them thinking that it was not the proper method for enlightenment. Then he practiced self-mortification by accepting the fact that that would be the path to enlightenment. But according to Mahāsacchaka Sutta, the Buddha said that, to Sacchaka that I practiced self-mortification to the highest level, but I did not feel anything surpassing human abilities. Therefore, I realized that this is not the way for the enlightenment. Then what is the way to enlightenment? In Mahāsacchaka Sutta and Mahāparinibbāna Sutta also witnessed that he remembered the incident he experienced as a child. There was a time that his father, as the king, organized a ceremony, and there he was kept under a tree. And Prince Siddhartha, as a young boy, with the experience that has been coming throughout samsara, he was able to attain to first jhana, jhanic experience. Then Bodhisattva, sitting under the Bodhi tree at Uruvela, thought that this would be the way for my enlightenment. Because there is no sensual pleasure in that happiness. There is no other happiness that is entailing any sort of mundane happiness. Therefore, this would be the direct way for enlightenment. In my thorough investigation, I think that the Bodhisattva was practicing the middle path for couple of, maybe at least 2 months or 1.5 months after his leaving from self-mortification. Because at the time he was leaving from self-mortification, his body was like a skeleton. But when the Bodhisattva attained full enlightenment, his body is beautiful as the Buddha statue behind me. So scientifically thinking, I think that he has been practicing middle path with food and all the other moderate facilities for several weeks. Therefore, he was able to think that the taking some food and having some useful thing in moderation is key factor for him to get into jhanic experiences. Therefore, he was practicing middle path. So on the day he actually sat down under the Bodhi tree, it is said that he had that skill, that energy. He could get the momentum to bring his mind into first jhana. So I think I invite everyone to read the way the Buddha attained full enlightenment, because it encouraged us to follow the same path. So Buddha, having remembered that incident that he experienced as a child, he attained to first jhana. As you know, when you attain to first jhana, you cut off the 5 hindrances temporarily, and you have the first jhana with 5 factors. So having attained to first jhana, he reached to second jhana and third jhana and the fourth jhana. These are discoveries of the Buddha himself, which included in the Noble Eightfold Path, because I would say that because some people mix with the Alara, Kala, Muddakaramput, and their jhanic experiences. So first jhana, second jhana, and third jhana, and fourth jhana are the experiences that the Buddha himself found and had in his training of the middle path. So after having attained to the fourth jhana, his mind was so pure. In Pali, it is said that Mudubhute Kammaniye Ananjapatte, and there are all the wonderful qualities in his mind to direct his mind to the next level for his path to enlightenment. So when he attained to fourth jhana, his mind was so bright and brilliant, and imperturbability was there. And then the upekka, samadhi, anya, all the wonderful qualities were there. Simply saying that the Noble Eightfold Path has been thoroughly, widely, deeply completed. Therefore, he was able to direct his mind towards the knowledge of knowing his own path. It is said here that he was directing his mind. It did not happen automatically without yoniso manasakara. In many in one discourse in as I remember Samyutta Nikaya, Buddha said that yoniso manasakara was the key factor for myself and all the arahants and all the other enlightened persons to attain to enlightenment. So Buddha was rightly directing his mind to know what this life is, what this samsara is. Then he saw that he was coming from long way through samsara. He was born to this life, and that his name was in that life such and such. So he was able to know uncountable number of lives of his past lives. So having realized that in the first watch of the night, he directed his mind towards the second knowledge, which is about all of us, all living beings. That is called Chuttupapata Jnana, the knowledge or the ability to know other beings' appearance and reappearance throughout the cycle of samsara. So having realized that knowledge in the middle watch of the night, in my opinion, I think he understood that myself and everyone have been coming throughout samsara without any break because of some sort of defilement. Because of, in other discourses, it says avidya, ignorance and tanha. But here, with regard to the context, he saw that myself and all the other living beings have been wandering in samsara because of, flow, the tains, asava, which has the nature of coming, flowing in, flowing out and flowing in. It has that nature. So he was able to focus the destruction of tains, which is the main cause of wandering in samsara by himself and others. So that happened at the last watch of the night, and it is easy to say, and it is easy to read, and it is easy to proclaim by anybody. But what he has done there at that night under the Bodhi is wonderful and cannot be thought by anybody except the Buddha himself. But what we can see from this marvelous and wonderful, unthinkable incident is that that he was crossing over in the normal lifestyles to supramundane, and now he is certain as the Buddha. Therefore, as Bhante Kusala said, that the whole world system trembled and shook, and something extraordinary happened. So that is how the Buddha attained to full enlightenment. And Buddha has turned this wonderful experience in different ways. But what I was telling was based on the Mahāsatchika Sutta. So Mahāsatchika was not a Buddhist. He was a follower of the Niganta, as I remember. So Buddha was explaining each and every bit of his training and also attained to full enlightenment just to make sense that he was doing such a marvelous thing. So if I have some time later in the discussion, I can contribute with something else. So for the moment, I just want to say that that is how our supreme teacher Buddha attained to full enlightenment. It is in a brief introduction to his enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante Jinananda. Of course, the 5 to 6 minutes are not enough to talk about how Buddha himself had become enlightened. And of course, there are some sutras, long sutras in the and also middle length discourses in the Majjhima Nikaya, like Acchariyaabbhutasutta Sutta, where Buddha himself is talking about his journey to enlightenment, what he did. Maybe we can talk about that later. And since we are talking about how Buddha became enlightened, and now, what does it mean? What is this enlightenment? And so I would like to invite Venerable Tathaloka Bhikkhuni to talk about this Abhisambodhi. Abhisambodhi, what is this Abhisambodhi? What does it mean? So, Venerable Tathaloka Bhikkhuni.
Sadhu Bhante, greetings all dear venerables. I just wondered, I saw that Venerable Bhikkhuni Sudhamma Terry, she gave her topic just a short time ago, and she mentioned that she would like to talk about the Buddha's mistakes before awakening. Would it be suitable to talk about that before, if we're following the time sequence?
Okay, I think that's a great idea. I was thinking about that. First, I wanted to talk about enlightenment. I think that your suggestion is great too. So let us invite Venerable Bhikkhuni Ayya Sudinna to talk about Buddha's failures. That is how he and many of his disciples tried and failed many times before enlightenment. So Venerable Sudhamma Theri.
Thank you, Ayya Tathaloka. Thank you, sir. Thank you, venerables. So, when people want to watch a movie or when they want to read a book, they hate it when there's a spoiler. And in fact, there'll be warnings. This analysis of this and that program has a spoiler. You don't want a spoiler. Why? Because when you know the end of the story, you don't appreciate the process. But if we can imagine that we don't know that the Buddha gained his goal, if we put ourselves back to the time before that, when it's not proven, what an audacious thing that he tried to do. What an amazing thing he was trying. It is just not even logical to think someone could actually break out of the closed system of samsara. I don't understand how it happened. I don't understand how he did it. I don't understand how he had such courage to even try without someone having truly blazed such a trail for him. And from the time he made his determination, this I will do. I will, find full freedom. I'll find a salvation for all beings, something that goes beyond aging and death, goes beyond all suffering. Well, the next life, it didn't happen. It didn't happen the next life, or the next, or the next. They say that 2 incalculable periods of lives and 100,000 lifetimes and change that he was and left over, that he tried and tried. So think about that. 2 incalculable periods of lifetimes plus another 100,000 left over that he failed. Then finally, this life, when he had such a tremendous inner pull towards finding some sort of spiritual awakening, salvation, solution to samsara, left the palace, found a teacher, and mastered those teachings, failed. And he didn't fail, the process failed of that teacher. And then the Karamaputa, his also failed. So then where does he turn? Well, he knew the sense pleasures aren't the answers. He'd already, fleshed those out, so to speak, for years, and found that plunging into the sense pleasures just leaves the mind sticky, wanting more. But the mortifications of the flesh don't leave the mind sticky. The mind can be very clear. So yes, that must be the way. So he went to the very end of the path of self-mortification, further than anyone had ever gone, right to the very edge of his life. He did the jujube fruit diet, failed. He did the bed of thorns, failed. He did the extreme seclusion where he ran from tree to tree and hillock to not be seen, failed. He did the starvation diet, 1 grain of rice a day. Now you may think, Sariputta, a grain of rice was larger in those days than it is today, but that is not the case. Well, it failed, failed, right up until the very moment he sat down. Still failure was threatening as the armies of Mara descended. And in the Sutta, the Buddha is quoted as identifying the armies of Mara as being, the certain first squadron is, sloth and torpor, or greed, hate, so forth. So all of the obstructing states of mind would have came up for him. So again, moment by moment, the person who hasn't read the spoiler, hasn't heard the end of the story, might still think, not making it. Looks like a failure here. And then finally, his mind was cleared and he started making his breakthroughs through the watches of the night. And not only our Lord Buddha, while some of his students were extraordinary, such as the Bhikkhuni Kema and Bahia the Bark-clad and others who just heard and understood. What about poor Ānanda? Watching people gain enlightenment right there in front of him. How about that incredibly humiliating night when the Buddha and Arahant monks meditated together, all in the bliss of Nibbana, and Ānanda's clueless, keeps trying to interrupt the Buddha to tell him to, be introducing him to these monks who had just come in. Again and again, he had failures until the moment he didn't. How about Padachara, who even put it into her poem, how she's wondering, why not me? She's doing everything right. She's not puffed up. She's really trying. Why not me? Until her moment of awakening. How about that poor nun who in her poem declared that 25 years from her renunciation, she didn't know peace of mind for a finger snap. Can you imagine sharing a vihara with her? She wouldn't have made it in robes in modern times. People wouldn't feed her. Everyone would be, go on, you're too much of a nuisance, you're terrible. Walks into the monastery, their hands over her head, wailing from her despair and pain. Oh, yeah, no fun at all. Vangisa left a record of his struggles. So it's not so unusual. And I'd like to encourage anybody who is watching this, that you don't have the spoilers for your own story. You may think that whatever's come up right in front of you in your life is an obstacle. It's a wrong thing that shouldn't have been right in front of you. Maybe it's the next right step for you, the next little baby step right in front of you. Maybe what you need for enlightenment is the material of your life that's right here, right now. And maybe there weren't mistakes. And maybe every life the Buddha had, all those long lives, maybe every single one of them was needed. Maybe he had to do every one of those austerities before he could rule that out and then find the way. And maybe what's right in front of you right now is the next thing to work with mindfully. I don't think you have to go find a different being in yourself or a whole different circumstance in order to start to find awakening. It may be part of your path to change things, that's true. But what's here right now? What is this next breath right now? This may not be a mistake. And the next failure that you have in your sitting might be the very material you need for your awakening later. So that's the reflection I wanted to share.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. And I think, we all fail sometimes, we all make mistakes. We truly learn from our own mistakes, from our own failures. And I think Buddha's journey to enlightenment, of course, he tried so many things. And of course, it's not that he failed, he tried. Those things did not lead him to what he was looking for. So finally, he found what he was looking for. So next, I would like to go to Venerable Bhikkhuni Tathaloka to talk about enlightenment, Abhisambodhi. And I would like to acknowledge Venerable Panya from Congo, Africa. Actually, he's here, but he did not put his video on. Venerable Panya, welcome. So, Venerable Tathaloka Bhikkhuni, now it's your turn.
Sadhu Bhante. Greetings, all dear venerables. Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Ye Dhamma Hetung Papahawa Tesang Hetung Tathagato Aha He Sanja Yo Nirodho Ewang Wadi Mahasamanoti.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Beautiful.
So Venerable Sudamma Terry was speaking about the faulty process, the process that doesn't work. And I'll be speaking about what the Buddha then realized in his great awakening experience, his Abhisambodhi, that does work. The verse that I just recited is one that has been spread far and wide throughout Asia and now around the world. When Buddha statues began to be made, sometimes the images of the Jain images of the Mahavira and the images of our Buddha Gautama could look very similar. Then the archaeologists, when excavating and finding those images, one way they knew for sure that it was a Buddha image early on is if they found the inscription of this Ye Dhamma or Ye Dharma verse, then they knew for sure that that was Buddhist, because other teachings had kinds of morality or sila, other teachings had types of meditation, samadhi, and other teachings had their various philosophical ideas of what is wisdom. But this breakthrough insight of the Buddha in his time was unique. I chose to speak about this because somehow these particular verses are just so poignant to me, and really, I don't know, they speak to my heart so compellingly. Even when I first encountered them, it's like sometimes you see or you hear or you read something that just makes your mind stop, as if the whole world just stops right there. And because that seeing the Dhamma in that way, or hearing the Dhamma in that way, or reading, contemplating the Dhamma in that way is just so absolutely compelling that it's as if everything else in the world falls away and there's only just this, right? Probably all of the venerables here know very well what I'm talking about this. So I'm going to be sharing then the three verses, verses 1 through 3 of the Udana. And I'll just tell you what I just recited was not that. But what I just recited is describing about this. And when disciples of the Buddha described about this in summary, for example, one of the first 5 bhikkhus walking for alms and then meeting then the seeker Upatissa, who was to become the noble Sariputta. Then when he asked for a teaching of Upatissa's master, then just this 4-line verse, which explained causation and cessation, was enough for Upatissa the seeker to plunge into the noble stream of the Dhamma and enter the Arahanta path. So compelling, so amazing. The verse that I just recited, which summarizes the Buddha's teaching about causation, conditional causation, and cessation. So this is the Bodhivagga, the chapter about awakening. And we have the Patama Bodhisutta, that's the first Bodhisutta on the Buddha's awakening. Then the Dutiya Bodhisutta and Tatiya Bodhisutta, the first, second, and third Bodhisutta, where the Buddha himself is describing the salient qualities of his penetrating insight, which led to his complete awakening, or Abhisambodhi. So at this time, the Blessed One was staying in Uruvela, on the bank of the Niranjana River, at the foot of the Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening, newly awakened. And on that occasion, he sat at the foot of the Bodhi tree for 7 days in one session, sensitive to the bliss of his newly found freedom, his liberation. Then, with the passing of 7 days, after emerging from that concentration, in the first watch of the night, he gave close attention to dependent co-arising in forward order. Then, in the second watch of the night, he gave close attention to dependent co-arising in reverse order. And in the third watch of the night, he gave close attention to dependent co-arising in a different manner, forward and back. So I'm not going to go through the entire text, but I would just like to share something of the salient insights that are shared here. And anyone who wishes to see this can follow up for themselves by typing Bodhi Sutta. So in the first watch of the night, the Buddha gave close attention to dependent co-arising in forward order. And the key initial insight was, when this is, that is. From the arising of this comes the arising of that. Conditional causation. We can understand then, we can see how this is at the root of the Buddha's later teaching, in his first teaching on the Four Noble Truths and the 12 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, as well as the 12-fold dependent origination in forward order. From this is, that is. From the arising of this comes the arising of that. Conditional causation. And realizing the significance of that, the Blessed One on that occasion exclaimed, as phenomena grow clear to the Brahman. In this case, Brahman does not mean a Brahmanical priest. Brahman refers to those who are dedicated to the path. To the Brahman ardent in jhana, his doubts all vanish when he discerns a phenomena with its cause. He speaks about then in discerning causation the vanishing of doubt, because conditional causation has become clear. In the second Bodhisutta, contemplating dependent or co-arising in reverse order, when this isn't, that isn't. From the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. With regards to the key topic of suffering, then, not only has he seen the causation for the arising of suffering, he has seen the non-causation, which is the cause for the ending of suffering. You can say, means without the cause, that suffering does not arise. With the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. This, of course, is the most powerful, because here we get then dukkha nirodha, which is, of course, the fundamental basis for the Buddha's own experience of awakening. And then, of course, the ending of ignorance, the ending of all ignorance, without the causes for ignorance being present anymore. In the absence of the causes for ignorance, then ignorance ceased, and there was no more ignorance, nothing to obstruct his clear view and understanding. He said, as phenomena grow clear to the Brahmin ardent in jhana, his doubts all vanish when he penetrates the ending of requisite conditions. And in the third Bodhisattva, the third contemplation, when this is, that is, from the arising of this comes the arising of that. When this isn't, that isn't, then it comes to be complete on both sides, both directions. Then the turning comes to be complete. And he says, as phenomena grow clear to the Brahmin, ardent in jhana, he stands routing Mara's army as the sun illumining the sky. So such a powerful image then in the third watch of the night of the Buddha's contemplation, where then his contemplation of dependent origination in forward order and in backwards order, arising and cessation, and the two together, then that key, crucial insight, unique to a Buddha's realization, unique to a Sambuddha's proper, right, and correct awakening came to be complete. And with that, then also the understanding of the path, what is to be done, what is not to be done, to practice effectively, which is the basis for him then to be able to teach the Dhamma effectively, proven then as we go ahead with then the turning of the Dhamma wheel, the setting into motion the Dhamma wheel, the Dhammacakka Pavatana Sutta. So I share this contemplation of the Buddha's own words as they've been passed down about his own contemplation, penetrative insight, the arising of Abhisambodhi.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well done. So that is the key reflection about the Paticcasamuppada and the Hetupalavada, the doctrine of cause and effect. That is the key principle the Buddha discovered and reflected on. And of course, based on that, he continued his service for 45 years until the age of 80. And of course, there are so many teachings he shared with the humanity. We don't have much time to talk about all the teachings, but the birth of the Buddha is definitely a great joy. So we have Venerable Ayya Sudinna from Carolina Buddhist Vihara, who would like to talk about Sukho, buddhanam, uppado, that verse. So Venerable Ayya Sudinna. You have to unmute, Venerable. You have to unmute yourself. Venerable Sudinna, you have to unmute. We can't hear you. Can you unmute? Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay. My respects to the Sangha. Friends, thank you for giving me this opportunity to give a Vesak message today. Once, when the monks were discussing what caused happiness, the Buddha uttered this verse, Sukho buddhanam uppado, sukha saddamma desana, sukha sanghassa samaggi, samagganam tapo sukho. Which means happy is the arising of Buddhas, happy is the teaching of the sublime Dhamma, happy is the unity of the Sangha, happy is the discipline of the united ones. The Tathagata rises in the world for the welfare and happiness of all beings out of compassion for them. But he is not a god or an incarnation of a god. He was a human being, and he credited all his attainments, accomplishments, and realizations to human striving and intelligence. So, through his wisdom, he crossed on to the other shore and guides others to cross over. He is peaceful and brings peace to others. He is tamed and is also the best tamer of others. He teaches those who delight in attachment about non-attachment. Those who delight in conceit, how to remove it. Those who are ignorant, how to become wise. Whatever he speaks, from the time he rises in the morning till night, he speaks only the truth and not otherwise. He speaks as he does and does as he speaks. As a teacher, his behavior, livelihood, the Dhamma teaching, his knowledge and vision are so pure, clean, and undefiled that even seeing an image of the Buddha, we automatically bow down to in respect and gratitude. In the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta, he says he never wanted to control the sangha, and they should not depend on him. The freedom of thought allowed by the Buddha is not found in any other religion. Happy is the teaching of the Dhamma because it is swakata or well expounded by the Buddha, and it is directly visible. Most religions are based on blind faith, but Buddhism lays emphasis on seeing, knowing, understanding, and not entirely on faith or belief. Though the word saddha is translated as faith, it is really confidence and trust that we place in the Dhamma, which comes through conviction after investigating, practicing, and seeing the result. Evipassiko means come and see, not come and believe. When one realizes the truth, it is said, the dust-free, stainless vision of the Dhamma has arisen, as said about Venerable Kondanya, the first disciple of the Buddha. It is said that if one practices and follows the Dhamma, that Dhamma will protect one. The Buddha says that the unity of the Sangha is when the monks live in agreement, undisputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with affection, and they generate much merit as if they are living in a divine abode. This pleasure helps in concentrating the mind. When the Sangha is harmonious, the Dhamma will not decline or disappear. Further, as the Sangha depends on the laity for the four requisites, when the laity sees the harmony, happiness, and peace within the Sangha community, they too would consider the community as a supreme field of merit. This Vesak day, let us be true disciples of the Buddha. Thank you.
Wow, wonderful. A marvelous Vesak message. And in fact, through this sutra, Zoom Sutra discussion, and bringing all the venerable monks and nuns from different countries, different regions of the world, is a way of creating this unity among the monks. And in fact, it's such a great joy to have all the venerable monks and nuns at this moment. Samagganam tapo sukho. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Venerable Sudinna. So now let us go to Buddha's last stage of life. That is based on the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta. And of course, as you all know, after becoming enlightened at the age of 35, for 45 years, Buddha traveled from village to village, kingdom to kingdom, meeting all people from all walks of life, all ages, and whoever came to him, and of course, he taught Dhamma for their own spiritual benefit. And so we have two venerables who would like to talk about some passages from the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta. So I would like to invite the Venerable Ayya Sobhana Theri to talk about the principles that prevent decline in the sangha. So Venerable Sobhana Theri. You have to unmute yourself, Venerable.
Thank you, Bhante, and great respect all the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis here. In many ways, when we think about the Buddha's parinibbāna, or even the Buddha's enlightenment, he is so refined and detached and at a distance from the ordinary disturbances of the mind. I'm saying this by way of giving a bit of a setup for the teaching that I want to point to in the Mahāparinibbāna. Even elsewhere, it speaks about what it is to be awakened, to be a fully enlightened arhat, where with any kind of feeling, one feels it with a detachment. Even at the end of life, they just understand this is a feeling of the end of the body. This is the end of life. And even at that moment of ending, there's no desire whatsoever, because there's no desire, no pleasure, then it becomes cool right there. And then this wisdom of cessation is the ultimate wisdom of enlightenment. So the Buddha had that. And yet out of his wonderful and marvelous compassion, he had spent the 45 years being among those who were not enlightened, finding diverse ways to present his truth in ways that people would be able to apprehend it and be able to make progress, to be able to obtain awakening. At the beginning section of the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta, we're starting something which is very different than most of the suttas, because it's like a historical narrative, more so than simply being on one occasion the Buddha gave this teaching and there's an explanation of one particular teaching. Instead, you have something which is setting the Buddha in the context of history. And the truth, the compassionate truth here is that the sangha doesn't all depart from the world at the time of the Buddha's parinibbāna. the Sangha has to carry on, the Sangha has to be in the world, and the Buddha, out of compassion, is setting up the design in the, especially in the Dhamma and the Vinaya, setting up the design so that the Sangha can be successful. So within this ocean of samsara, the principles of the Dhamma, the principles of cessation, the principles of Nibbana can be kept alive within the context of history. At the beginning of the Mahāparinibbāna Sutta, there's this startling passage about King Ajatasattu, Vedehiputta of Magadha, who is deciding to declare war and destroy the country of the Vajis. He sends his ambassador, named Vasakara, to go and explain this to or report this to the Blessed One, to the Buddha, and to see what the Buddha will have to say about it. Now, it's quite astonishing to think that a king who could be so cruel and so evil and so violent would even contemplate going to the Buddha. Is he looking for a blessing or for some kind of help from the Buddha? This may have happened in history, but I also see this as a kind of a parable for the dangers which are faced by the Sangha. As the Sangha goes through history, it might be at different times in history that cruel people who are immoral, rulers or politicians who are engaged in doing immoral things could be approaching the Sangha and looking for getting some blessing from the Sangha. And so the Sangha needs to know how to respond and to be skillful, not only with people who are sincere practitioners seeking awakening, seeking the escape from suffering, but also towards all kinds of people. And as this story goes along, the Buddha gives 7 principles for which he states to be the reasons why the Vajis could not be conquered. The Vajis are strong because they are unified and harmonious, and as long as the Vajis practice these 7 principles, they would not be conquered. Now this ambassador, this Brahmin, who's been sent as a diplomat to see what the Buddha is going to say, having heard that the Vajis are not able to be conquered because they're following these principles, he could have gone back to King Ajatasattu and said, well, no use waging war on them. They're inconquerable because of their principles. Perhaps we should undertake to also follow the same principles so that we could also be happy. But no, he doesn't take the Buddha he doesn't take this teaching or this lesson in the right way that it was intended, that it should be taken as something to be practiced with. Instead, he grabs the wrong end of the snake, and he goes subsequently as like a spy among the Vajis, and stirs up gossip, stirs up slander, stirs up disharmony, and gradually over a period of years undermines these good principles within the Vajian country, so that that country becomes weak and then can subsequently be conquered. And so again, I believe that this story, this setup story for this sutta is a kind of a parable. The Buddha, with his great compassion, is trying to give us the means to be successful, to be able to preserve the Dhamma, to be able to realize what the Buddha is teaching, and to be able to pass the true Dhamma along through the generations. And the story is a kind of warning, a vivid warning. Don't take the teachings, don't take the Dhamma, don't take the Vinaya by the wrong end. Don't try to use the Vinaya or the Dhamma as a way to undermine or harm anybody. If you've done that, very negative things will come back to you.
Mm.
Now, these seven, he gives 7 principles that are almost exactly the same or parallel between what he advises for the secular rulers and what he advises for the Bhikkhu Sangha. And then after that, there's this 7 more. So there's many sets of 7 that are given, but I just want to speak about these first 7. The Sangha should meet frequently and have many meetings. That's the first, exactly the same in civil society. So our group therapy, our group harmony, as a result of having many meetings together and being like a humanist, like what is for the progress and support of us as human beings. That's our ultimate goal. Secondly, to meet in harmony, live in harmony, and carry on our business in harmony. Again, this is the same for the Sangha as it is for civil society. And a culture which thinks that a harmonious Sangha is not possible is well on the way to failure. A culture that thinks that combat warfare, that efforts to harm or destroy one's adversaries is a society which is on the way to failure. And if a Sangha falls into that, we are on the way to failure. Instead, we have to find out how to speak and meet in order to reconcile differences, to settle differences, to come to harmony, and to be able to not allow disputes to linger, but instead to find ways to reconcile them. The third one is not to make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but undertake and follow the training rules as they have been decreed. We know that there's been many changes in history, and sometimes different periods of history, people might think that some parts of the old rules of the Patimokkha are no longer relevant. But then the monks who we admire and esteem the most are the ones who take the original Vinaya as something deeply significant, deeply important, that we must make the effort to understand both at the literally what it meant at that time, and what was the purpose of the Vinaya, so that we can bring the Vinaya forward and bring it into our modern existence, upholding the intention and the purpose of the Vinaya. It's not explicitly stated here, but I think it's implied here. We know that some of the decisions, the formal decisions that are made by communities are made through a consensus where it has to be a unanimous decision of the Sangha to ordain somebody, for example. And in that way, we know that we have the first democracy in the world, and we have the society in the world which has been in continuous existence for the longest time. In a certain way, we have something which is a kind of a model society. And when other people understand a little bit, lay people in civil society, when they understand how the Vinaya works and how the monks work harmoniously together, how we respect our rules and interpret our rules, they may see, oh, these are principles that could be applied elsewhere. It could be at our city council, or within our family, or within our business, or within our club or our society, we could follow some of the similar ways of doing things as the way that the monks do them. So we're setting an example. I'm going to speed up now.
Yeah.
Honor, respect, and esteem the senior mendicants, those of long standing, long gone forth, find them worth listening to. That's the counterbalance to the democracy, is the respect and veneration that we give to the elders. Don't fall under the sway of a risen craving for future lives. In the Sutta, when Buddha is speaking about what makes the Vajjan people wrong, he says that they don't rape or abduct women or girls from their families and force them. So this is the sin of like violence and sexual desire, sensual desire. And then on the monk side, the parallel rule to that is not falling under the craving for the pleasure of heaven or the pleasure of being in a formless realm of existence. It's the danger, in a way, of spiritual materialism. In civil society, the Buddha mentioned that the Vajjan people respect, esteem, and venerate their shrines, their chaityas, making the proper offerings. And then for the sangha, for the bhikkhus, he says, take care to live in wilderness lodgings. I'm going to extend this recommendation to suggest that as bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, we ought to take care of nature. I learned from the great scholar Hajime Nakamura, the Japanese scholar, that the original chaityas that were made would be where the relics or the remains of an honored deceased person would be buried under a mound of earth, and a tree would be planted on that mound of earth. So then in worshiping a chaitya in the earlier days, this is like pre-Buddhist times, they would be worshiping a tree. And the tree is, bringing its life and its nutriment from the ashes or the remains of that honored person who came before. So when we're in the wilderness, we see the cycle of life, the cycle of life and death, the passage of nature, and we preserve and protect that. So it's a stretch, but I think that the Sangha ought to have the heart to protect nature.
Yeah,
Then,
so Venerable Sobhana theory, and
yes.
Since we are coming to an end, we just have, I think, 3 more minutes, and
Okay.
I would like to, can you conclude your...
The last point is to establish mindfulness, and that is our protection. Establishing our individual mindfulness, so that those who are in the community will be comfortable with one another. So these principles are the ones that the Buddha gave us when he was so compassionate to know that we are still in this world, not able to be completely withdrawn from the secular world, but touching the secular world. And these are the principles that will keep us safe as we go forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable Ayya Sobhana Devi. And of course, we can talk more. All of you have a lot of stories, and we can spend hours and hours. But since we are coming to an end, I had to rush you to finish the. So now I would like to invite Venerable Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu to talk about the last word, final words of the Buddha. And you got.
I get the last word.
A few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think it goes without saying that this is a very important statement of the Buddha. It's given its own chapter called The Last Words of the Buddha. Apamādena sampādetha. Apamādena sampādetha. I want to translate it literally, but I'm going to get it all wrong. Well, it means to complete everything, to become full, and to fulfill all of your practices, all of the practices of the Buddha, to fulfill the path to enlightenment by using apamāda, or with apamāda. And I want to say, I'll try and be very brief here, but I want to say that I think it's worth stressing the importance of the word apamāda. That in some ways it doesn't get enough coverage or enough discussion. You know, we don't often talk about how to be apamāda. I know in Buddhist cultures, it's been adopted into various languages. In Sri Lanka, they have a word pramadaya or apramadaya, I guess. But, and in Thai as well, my pramad, they have these words. But there's often not a very clear understanding of what exactly it means. So I want to say a few things in the time I have. First of all, that the word apamāda, of course, comes from the word pamāda, and the root is mud, which relates to intoxication. It's something that's actually very familiar to most Buddhists. Every time we take the 5 precepts or give the 5 precepts, the 5th precept, of course, majja pamadatana, anything that is a base for pamāda. And this is a good explanation of why the 5th precept is so important and why it's actually included, when in fact, taking alcohol doesn't hurt anyone. But it's included in there because of how important it is to be not intoxicated and how important pamāda is. The commentary to one of the Dhammapada verses, a very famous one about Samawati. You know, the story about Samawati, this queen who was accused of betraying the king, and who was burnt alive by a jealous queen. And then the jealous queen was killed violently, tortured and brutally murdered as well. And the monks asked who was alive and who was dead. And the Buddha said this very powerful quote that if someone is apamāda, they are as though already dead, even though they're alive. Ye pamatta yatha mata. Apamato namiyanti. Those who are not pamāda never die. This is the path to never dying. So the commentary to that says, Sakalampi te pitakang, that the whole of the Buddha's teaching can be summed up as the path to not be pamāda, to not be intoxicated. I had a lot to say, but I'm going to just, at the end, we do actually practice apamāda, and it is a big part of our Buddhist practice. And I don't want to suggest that we've neglected this teaching. Absolutely, we must be very careful we don't neglect it. But I think in general, the Theravada Buddhist community especially, has done a very good job in teaching what it means to be apamāda, simply because, according to the teachings, the practice of apamāda means to be possessed with mindfulness. That when we practice sati, mindfulness, of course, there's one thing, if there's anything that we have brought to the secular, to the larger global community, it's the knowledge of mindfulness. You hear about mindfulness and mindfulness meditation popping up everywhere. This is largely because of the Buddha's influence, of course. And this is what it means. The commentaries say, Satya avipawaso apamādo. Apamādo ti vucchati. Apamādo vucchati satya avipawaso. When you are not without sati. This is what it means to be apamāda. That's all I have to say. I'll leave it there.
Right
Time
on
up.
time. Right on time.
Trying to condense it all.
Thank you so much. I know it's also a very important discussion. You have so much to talk about. And of course, we have come to an end. But I would like to hear just 1 or 2 minutes from our beloved Bhikkhu Bodhi. Would you like to say 1 minute or something about Vesak message?
I really can't say anything in 1 minute. I think it would have been better if there were more periods for discussion. If the presentations were shorter and there were more periods for discussion.
Yeah.
But the time is up.
That's right. Well, maybe we can have another discussion, but would you like to say a few words?
No, I think everything is okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you say everything is okay, that's okay. Okay, so I would like to express my gratitude to all the venerable monks and nuns who joined this bi-weekly sutta discussion on the Vesak Eve, as the whole world is celebrating the Vesak, the birth, enlightenment, and passing away of the Buddha. And you have made a lot of contributions today by talking about the birth, enlightenment, and passing away of the Buddha. And I wish we had more time to tell you or share more stories, more words of wisdom, more dharma. But as you know, we are meeting bi-weekly. So our friends who are joining us from different countries will be able to hear more dharma. So now, to conclude today's bi-weekly sutta discussion, I would like to invite Bhante Vijita from Ottawa, Canada, to recite the Ovada Patimokkha today.
My respect to all the Venerable Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis, and thank you, Bhante San Father. So being mindful of the time, I'm going to chant only the first verse. That is known as the message of all the Buddhas, Gautama Buddha and Buddhas who were in the past. So simply it means be away from all the unwholesome actions that bring suffering to oneself and others, and cultivate wholesome qualities that bring peace, harmony to oneself and others, and purify one's mind. And this is the message of all the Buddhas. So let's make a wish, may this message be with all living beings, whoever in this world, those who are going through so much suffering, and may these blessings be with all the humans, animals, and each and everyone. Sabba papassa akaranang kusalassa upasampada sacitta pariyodapanang etang buddhana sasanam.
Thank you so much, Bhante Vijita, for reciting the Ovada Patimokkha today. And thank you, Venerable Sirs, Venerable Bhikkhunis and Bhikkhus for joining us today. And I'm hoping to see all of you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, I would once again, I would like to wish you all happy Vesak. May you have all the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, the Sangha, for good health, for your safety, and may Devas continue to protect and guard you, and may you be well, happy, and peaceful. May all sentient beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Thank you. Good night.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Happy Vesak to all.
Happy Vesak.
Okay.
Blessings of the Triple Gem.
Happy Vesak for everyone.
Teruvan Saranai Bhante.
Teruvan Saranai.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu Ayya Sudinna. Thank you.
Thank you.